Hi, my name is Sally Barnard, an artist, author, and spiritual experiencer. Welcome to Call Me Zena, a true story into the spiritual realms. Join me as I sit and discuss the journey of self-discovery, and with the help of my spirit guides, it's time to trust your intuition. Sit with me and call in live 888-994-4995, Studio A. And now onto the show.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to my show. Please call in if you have any questions. I really do appreciate the audience and also the audience here in the studio, because I often say I'm only as good as the question that you ask me. The number here is 888-994-4995. So if you have anything you want to ask me, please feel free to call in. It's Studio A. And now I'm going to open up to the studio here. Again, I'm only as good as my question. Okay. Hi, Karen. I know that I'm dying to hear what you have to ask me.
So this weekend, something came to me, and I started wondering if are fairies real, and where did the fairy godmother or fairy parents, where did that concept come from?
Okay. The only thing I did know about your question, it was something to do with fairies, but this is not coincidence. And as Dawn will tell you too, I'm very, very connected with fairies. I didn't realize until Dawn actually started to talk about it, and I said, we have something here. And only a couple of weeks ago, I suddenly made sense to me. Fairies do, in my world, I'm going to say, do exist. And the fact that you had this message, and I'm not sure quite what the message was, as you haven't mentioned it to me but it's in another dimension, Karen. And you're getting messages, as I have too. It's like you raise your vibrational energy, and I talked about this too. When you do that, you actually see more. So I know it sounds strange, and it is even strange for me to say that, but the fairies are amongst us. Because if you lift that vibration just a little bit, you get into what we would call another dimension. They're in the other dimension. So I'm very eager. Did they give you a message of any kind? I'm eager to...
I was thinking of Cinderella, and when the fairy godmother turned the mice and the pumpkins and stuff into humans, and I was like, I wonder if fairy godparents exist and are human.
Well, they don't look the same as us because they look like fairies. And I have always been so attached to this because even many, many years ago, before I even understood, because to me, fairies, they don't exist. But I was in North Carolina, and I remembered as if it was yesterday. I went into a bookstore, and in fact, Dawn, if you're around here, she knows because I bought the same book for her. I was attracted right to a book. I opened it, and it was all about fairies. And it was like a fairy was documenting this book. It was like a diary. And I said to myself, oh my God, I have to buy this. It had fairy dust. It was just unbelievable. Dawn, I don't know if you're around. Okay, and I bought one at that time. And I went through it, and I was fascinated how they had a little diary in there and how they were working and how they existed. But it never left my mind. And when I came to the studio, Dawn had mentioned fairies. So the first thing I did, and I couldn't even remember the name of the book because I didn't have it at that point. Somehow it had gotten lost. Right. So I go into Amazon, and the first fairy book that came up was the fairy book that I wanted. So I bought one for Dawn too. Awesome. So in my world, and I have to say that because I'm sure a lot of people are going, what is she talking about now? Fairies, they do exist in my world. And here you come in and say that. And here I've talked to Dawn about it. So.
It's no coincidence that Dawn carries
a wand.
A magic wand, and it's similar to what you have with some of your paintings.
Exactly. I don't know if it's sitting here right now, but some of my paintings, and before I met Dawn, I had that magic wand. Well, it wasn't on a stick, but I did the same little thing that she attached to what we would call a... Yeah.
That question came to me because I was remembering, like in Disney, they have a lot of, cartoons and stuff that show like someone else, Tinkerbell, or it shows like a fairy world,
right?
But no one really knows.
Well, because it is done as fantasy basically, but I've had in my mind, I hear too much. I mean, I went many, many years ago. It was like a fun fair, I think you call it over here, to a place in London. And it only dawned on me later when I began to understand that fairies do exist, as you know too, Dawn. She's here now to tell. And I was walking around this fairground thing, and there was like a whole lot of, I was seeing them, but I didn't understand it. I thought everybody else could see this. They were in this fun fair, and they had, like, I told you, Steve, about this. They're walking around, these people are like this high, and they're talking about fairies, and they're talking. So I thought they were, in my mind, they were there. So when I started to question other people, did you see them? Nobody saw them. But even to this day, and it was like 40 years ago, I still see this little village of all these little people who were talking about fairies. So now it all makes sense to me because I realized that I was on a different vibrational energy there. I didn't know that. I assumed everyone could see them, but they didn't. So that was my proof to me that this does exist.
There are different views of fairies depending on where you live.
Well, yeah, what
there-
I'm trying to get, basically, which kind of to me, if to explain it, is that if we're on a different higher vibrational energy, I might see something and you might if you're on that vibrational energy. So what I'm seeing is what other people, not just me, can see when you lift that vibrational energy, which involves a lot of things. It's just not that, it's many things.
Now, do you
But-
think that all fairies are the same, or are there like different types of
That
fairies?
I don't know. I mean,
Because in London, fairies are not exactly the happy ones.
well, it depends. It also depends, and in a way, that's a good question because that depends on where we are in our life here on this. So if you're on a lower vibration, and you this is just coming to me. Go into a higher vibration. It also will reflect your mood. You have to be on a higher vibration for that to happen. So you are somewhere, but if you're feeling like even then a little bit low, this is just coming to me. You're going to see them differently, although
so
you're able to
the
see
fairies
it.
can reflect
Yes,
your emotions.
reflect,
You're saying
exactly. You're absolutely
So,
right. Yes,
I
you
guess.
explain that well.
Well, for
Can you speak a little higher?
Oh,
Yes.
yeah, sorry. For at least for the ones in London or like in England, there's only from what I heard, there's a tale of like fairies taking kids away to like a little forest.
Yeah,
so would that be
That would be it too. Yes.
would that be like they're
yeah.
like the kids are scared and are lost in like
And I'd love to go on with this, but the only reason I'm going to change the subject a little bit is that there may be people that think I'm completely nuts at this point, but just to keep an open mind, they do exist in my world, and for people that understand where I'm coming from, they will also be able to see fairies.
I was gonna say, did they come out with a fairy back in the day because of we look at them like they would help us or they would.
Well, it's not just fairies. People talk about gnomes and, especially
Yes.
in Ireland. And that's a good example. That's just coming to me too. They see all these things, certain people in Ireland, and they were known for that. So where does that come from? If we're all seeing something that we may not believe, but if a collective of people are seeing that, it has to somewhere exist in people's minds. So that kind of begins you to open up a mind a little bit about that, right?
It makes me think of magic. Not
Yes,
everyone
yes.
thinks magic
Yeah.
is real, but there's a way of the performer doing the magician.
It's up to the individual how we interpret it, Karen. That's a good answer, a good question too. Because if you're closed-minded about something, and not just what we're talking about with anything, it's reflecting what you're going to see on the outside. So if this is happening and you truly believe it, which I do at this point, I'm going to see more. I'm going to see a happy person because that's what I'm reflecting when I do that. So it applies to a lot of different things, actually. And you've got to have an open mind, and that's entirely up to us to have that open mind. But I've opened my mind to things that I never thought that I would. And I see so much more because of that. So
And I
that was a
think
good
that-
question. Thank you.
I think that it all basically comes down to perspective, and this can
Yeah.
be supported by science and also
Yes. And that's also a good question because it
And
brings up
because
another topic about
there's-
science.
Yeah. Well,
So-
there's
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna ask, so is there a dimension that there's another sort of spiritual world in?
there is
Well,
a
there
fifth
is.
dimension.
There's what we call the astral plane, which when I was astral projecting, I obviously, and I didn't know that, but I was going. We actually go to the astral plane. We just don't know it when we're sleeping, and some people can recall what happened. That's exactly part of what was happening to me, only I didn't know. But to me, it became very real because I was remembering things, and I thought, well, how in the world is this possible? Then I was hearing about the astral plane, and if you think about it, an astral projection is very people understand that are, that know it. They know it exists because there's so many people that do this and travel. So yes, it's happening on the astral plane, which is different from here. It's a different dimension.
And some of the things that you saw when you were traveling, you obviously saw in a previous time in your lives because you started drawing things like pyramids
Exactly.
and Mayan ruins and things like that. So why don't you explain about the pyramids and how that came to be in your drawings?
Right. Well, actually, if people that know my story, and of course you do, and most people in the cafe here do know that, I had never drawn anything in my life before, and I got a message to start drawing. So I didn't realize that I was able to do this now from something that I had not seen in this lifetime, but I'm putting it on paper. So I was beginning to wonder how am I able to do that. But one of the very first things that I drew, and you know that because you've seen my first sketches too, some of them were pyramids. So I'm thinking, well, why am I drawing so much from the pyramids from that time? And the more and more I began to understand that, I realized that I was getting messages about that. And I didn't actually see the program, but apparently last week or 2 weeks ago, they were showing the pyramids where they found now something beneath the pyramids. I seen a picture.
It was a radar.
Okay, so they were able to go in.
Radared, I'm not sure if it's factual, but apparently they used radar and they found that there is some kind of formation or structure under the pyramids that
So, yeah,
looks, that
what
looks
I-
kind of like
Just
a
to explain
cylinder,
to,
but I don't know if
yeah,
it's
no, and again, the way that I am right now, I do get more messages. So what I believe is that they opened up part of the pyramid because they're able to, and also they could go down because through radar they can see through. That I believe, and I mean, I'm not sure because this is just the message, is that it was some sort of communication that they can have, which is kind of like what we would say like a giant computer. I'm not saying that that's what they found, but it may have been different. I have not listened to this, but this is what I'm feeling, so that they can communicate with what we would now call, as like aliens or whatever we want to call them. But I don't feel so bad about saying this anymore because even on the news, as you said, it's been on that they are seeing and understanding much more that we're not alone. So I believe that many, many thousands of years ago these existed. And again, this is just my prediction that I feel that we will hear more in the next, I'm going to say by the end of the year, we will hear more.
I have, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Based on what you were just saying, I was gonna say, how is it that you do you listen to that voice, whether it's a spirit, something that when it's telling you something, you have to follow through, because if you don't, it could lead you to another way.
Well, and again, these are all good questions. That's entirely up to us, Karen. I always say keep an open mind because we are given these messages. Each and every one of us are given messages. But if you don't understand it or you don't believe it, the messages don't mean anything. So I actually got a message about this the other day. It's like me talking to someone here who has a closed mind. I will try to open that, and it's the same in spirit. They talk to us, but if you're not going to listen, it's like, well, let's go to the next person. And I believe that they do that. They all try to give us messages. So it's up to us at that point to open our mind a little bit, and then we can interpret in a way. You'll have synchronicity about what you're hearing. In fact, you came in here and told me I didn't want to know the question, but it was something to do with fairies. you opened my mind into remembering, because I'm here and I understand a little bit more because I've done a little bit more training for myself. So we all get messages. We don't all listen, but it may not be, and it's not our fault. It may not be our time, but I believe that when it is your time, you'll meet people, as I have in the cafe, that have a similar sort of outlook on this and that same vibrational energy. Okay, I'm just going to ask you to ask me the question, because then I get kind of carried away. Because no, that's all right. But if you have, we'll just finish this and then we'll go from there. So, because it's a good topic for all of us, actually. It basically, if you can just keep an open mind. It's hard to believe when we started with a very strange thing to people, which was fairies. But, if you begin to think about it, I've got so many questions and I need to stop talking. Yes, what?
Right, okay. Well, you spoke about a few seconds ago about like-minded people that believe in what you know, and people seem to be drawn to this building in order to voice their opinions and views and share their knowledge of your world, and which I'm trying to be a big part of and learn as much as I can. So why do you suppose so many people are drawn to you and in this building?
Because it's like a magnet, Steve. This is the only way that I can describe it. Because my vibrations and everybody here, whoever's here, go out to people. And this is hard to understand, but I've had so much proof of this today. So what I'm sending out, and it actually could even be somewhere else in the other end of the world, that vibrational energy of everything goes out. But the people that hear that, because it's local for a lot of the people coming in are local people, and they're very like-minded like myself, and you see that all the time here. So they're actually drawn here. It's like they feel compelled to come here, and as Freddie or Dawn can attest to, people from the outside who didn't even know what was in here walk in here. They may not come in again, but I've happened to be the reciprocant of them talking to many times, as you've attested to, right? You've seen that. So we're at this point, especially here right now, and I'm not there all the time. In this studio right now, I am on a higher vibrational energy. So it makes sense that people that have lifted their vibrational energy are going to be attracted to something. I mean, I had a very good example of that a couple of hours ago when that girl came in. I'd never met her. She took one look at me, and I took one look at her, and I could literally feel her. Never met her, knew nothing about her. She comes over to me too. She's not here right now. And she said, I felt your vibration, and I felt hers. It was so strong that at that point in time when we were talking, she was looking at me, I felt like there was a train in my ear. I could hear this, the humming and the train. And she walked over and she said, you feel my vibration? Very
And I saw that happening, and that was
You saw
really
it.
special.
And I thought, what in the world is going on with my ear? I didn't even pick it up. She said, it's my vibrational energy you're picking up. I said, absolutely. And when she spoke about it, and when we actually touched each other, guess what happened? It went away.
Wow.
So you saw that. I'm not making any of this up. I'd never met her in my life. Well, so I thought. And I've never said to anybody, you're special. But I was compelled to say to her, you're special. Someone just walked in here as me, although she didn't know them in here. And it's just validation for myself too. And the fact that you were here too, Steve, when you saw that whole thing unfold. It's up to us to take in what's happening. We don't have to. If we're not ready, we don't have to do this. But if you're ready, you'll see it all the time.
And how come some people have more insight, intuition, more gifts, more, spiritualism or
Well,
medium? They like
we all
understand.
have it, Karen. We're actually all what they call psychic. But it's not always our time to wake up to this. We've had many, many lifetimes. But I am meeting, because I'm very open about it. I've had my show here for 2.5 years. So where the people that are open are ready to talk about it. But many, many people, I'd say, I can't give you a percentage, are not. And it's not their time. And it doesn't matter what you say. They're not going to see it. But someone that's already opening their mind, as you guys here too, you're lifting that vibrational energy. So it doesn't sound silly what I'm talking about. You can say to me, as you can too, oh, I can relate to that. I feel you. I feel you. I obviously feel Steve. Dawn and Freddie aren't sitting here right now, but I feel that energy, and it bounces onto you and bounces back. I'm not saying that doesn't happen with everybody, but if you're on a different vibration, you're not going to feel it. It may be happening, but you don't feel it.
And if your audience would like some more insight into how this all came about for you, your book is wonderful, and they can scan the QR code that's right behind you, or go to Amazon,
Right.
And look for Call Me Zena, Zena.
And that was great that you mentioned that, because the beginning part of my book, before me even understanding it, it was all about how I was getting that vibrational energy, which I didn't understand. I just felt my whole self vibrating. But that was that I was lifting, as that happened here in the studio today. That vibrational energy was calling me, so to speak. So I lifted myself, and people that are in tune with that are going to feel it. So if they're nearby here, they're going to come in.
And if you get the book, the bound copy has her artwork in it with the early drawings and an explanation of them. But you can also get the ebook,
Right.
And at least here.
Yeah, if you go into, which I'm going to be advertising more, my website, because I'm actually doing my art on clothing, it'll all be in there, so we can go from there. But just so that people get to know me a little bit here, and please, if you have any questions about that, please call in. It is also, if they have a question about my book, I'm happy to, talk about it.
For the people that you encounter, is everyone connected with that the voice? Like, do we have angelical messengers, or?
Yeah, that's also a good question, Karen, because we actually all have what I'm going through right now, and what we talk about, each and every one of us, we're no different. You know how they say everybody is one? Yeah, but we're just part of that. So the collective is actually, let's say, the all, if you want to, whatever you want to call source, Christ consciousness, whatever you want to call it. Well, I say God, but that, I believe that's a little higher, but I don't know that. I don't go into that part of it. But you have a consciousness that we're all, but we're all individualized, so to speak. So we have free will.
You know how journeys in life, a journey in life can be very different. Like the way Chloe was raised to other, people. Where is it that you get that guidance? Like it, like someone who is always watching you and wants you to be careful, or?
That's good, because you first and foremost, before anything, you have to believe, let's call it the higher power, because without that, you're not going to have an open mind. Just doesn't matter what you believe, whoever it is, and you're aware of that too, that you have to believe there's something greater than who we really are as people. We are great, but we don't believe it. So once you tune into that, you're already opening your mind that there is more. So believe that miracles, whatever we want to call them, do happen. But as you do that, you're lifting that vibrational energy. Because if you're down and everything is going bad for you, you're not going to, it doesn't mean it's not there. It's there. But you've got to be able to see it. And I feel very strong about telling you this, because I know you understand this. So that is what helps you with anything. I mean, in other words, people talk about a rock bottom. What they're doing is they're closed completely. So they ask sometimes for help. And the amazing thing is, if you ask for that, you get it.
Do we have reincarnation happen? Like when something doesn't go right, do we reincarnate and get it right the next time?
That's entirely up to, I'm sorry. The reincarnation is, I believe, on your journey is important. You choose to come back. So you don't have to necessarily do that, but we've started like opening a book. Are you going to just read the end or not in between? You want to continue. So that's entirely up to us. But I believe that when we're in spirit, we see our whole life in front of us. So there's periods, like things in that life, and you get to see everything you've done. And you may not say, oh my gosh, I need to correct that. That's us. we choose that. So when you come back and you correct, you then aware of it. If you're more open-minded, you're going to maybe remember, as I am beginning to now. So you will correct that. I'm going to say you don't have to, but you haven't finished your journey. So no matter what it is, you want to correct it so that you go on with this journey. So it may not be in the next lifetime. The crazy part about this is it could be 2 or 3 lifetimes later, but that will all be, because we go through this in a minute. We're really, in our time, it seems like a long time, but it really isn't.
Yeah, what I was feeling is, like, in our journey, we choose, we have our decisions. So if we don't make the right choice, where does that come from?
Well, in a way, I'm going to say we judge ourselves.
Okay.
So when we do that, and we do that normally, usually it'll come to us because we get a life review. So everything that we do is planned out. Do we do everything that we've planned out? No, because we have free will. So when we're in the process of doing something and it doesn't feel right, sometimes we need to go back into ourselves and we choose to correct that, but we don't know we're doing that. So as that happens, certain people will come into our lives to help us here.
How is
Go
it that
ahead.
how is it that there's kids who have old souls? Like, is it a reincarnated spirit in a child's body?
Well, yes, it is, but they call it old souls. I mean, it doesn't mean that they've reincarnated. We tend to think that they've been back. We have been back many times, but an old soul isn't necessarily they've been back 1,000 times, but they've learned a lot on their journey, be it from this dimension here or even another place. They choose to come in, and a lot of people choose to come into Earth that we would call old souls, but they've learnt their lessons from somewhere else, but they come in with a lot of knowing, I call it, not knowledge, because it's not textbook knowing. It's much more than that. It's knowing within ourselves. So they come in to recorrect certain things that have happened in our past, so to speak.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Your journey started like from childhood, but the real journey started about 20 years ago when you traveled for the first time.
Right.
And then when your mind was totally ready, then your guide here on Earth found you and changed your life
And
forever.
that's a good example of what happened for me, because my guide, Aldo, anyone, if you read my book or have read my book, will know who Adamir Aldo is. He was here in physicality. He knew me, and we worked in the same place for nearly a year. I'm going to say a year, but it might have been longer, in the same building, never ever approached me. However, when I traveled and I got my message to go and draw, I had no idea that I was astral projecting because I knew nothing about it. He introduced himself to me, having worked in the same building as me for over a year, and comes up, taps me on the shoulder, and says to me, because I needed the validation, I thought I was going crazy, "I know where you were last night in your so-called dream." And I'm going, I didn't know. And he then, at that point, describes in detail what I thought was a dream, everything that had happened to me. And as far as I know, including that you were given a message to draw. Well, I must have been very close-minded, because how could I now be close-minded about someone who waited for my time to begin to, I'm not going to say wake up because I had a lot more to learn, but had opened their mind enough for this to happen.
And he further opened your mind, and he gave you knowledge and supported you, spiritually, and explained
For the
everything
next
that was going on
18
for
years
you.
of my life. And this stuck in my mind. It's just a little word. We say knowledge and knowing. Knowledge is so different. He always used to say to me, don't say knowledge, it's knowing. And the more and more I hear that, I'm realizing that, because you can be, you can be smart reading books and one thing, but if you're not picking up the right books, you're not going to get that knowing if you're interested in it. So,
And you have a stronger intellectual conscience.
yes, I do, because I've developed that. I'm not saying I didn't. We're all born with this. We just don't use it. I'm no different.
That's why-
I'm saying this all the time. I am no different to anybody else. I want to spread this because I'm no different. I asked all the questions to Aldo, but he was there to answer me, because he said to me, you knew all, this is me. He said, you knew this from another lifetime. You're just re-remembering in this lifetime. He found me. I think we have to break for a commercial, but this is a great topic.
Yeah.
So I see you guys on the other side of the commercial, and I always say not the other side, but of my commercial.
A true story, Call Me Zena, is the telling of Sally Barnard. Born in London, England at the end of the Second World War, she came into the U.S. in 1979. A mother of 2 and a grandmother of 4, she settled in Florida and worked in real estate. While going through a difficult time in her life, she was admitted into a hospital overnight in December of 2005. While settling back into her life, she began having vivid dreams and documenting them. By the 3rd dream, a lady gave her a message to draw. With no artistic background or interest into art or history, Sally listened to her dreams and grabbed a paper and crayons. Today, she has over 150 pieces of inspiring art and poetry. This book follows her journey and interpretations of these messages. She describes in detail on how she is able to astral a project and who she has met along her travels, including her spirit guides. This book will show you how anything is possible with an open mind. These events have changed Sally's life and direction, and this book will show you how to change yours. Purchase Call Me Zena on Amazon today, authorhouse.com and amazon.com.
My story starts at 4 or 5 years old. My name is Sally Barnard, and I was born at the end of the Second World War, in the middle of an air raid siren going off. My parents were in a movie theater, and my mother went into labor. My father ran out of the movie theater, but there was no cabs to be available because everybody is running for cover. However, they found one, and the taxi driver was given the address to take my father and my mother to the hospital. As my mother was in labor, about a half an hour, I arrived at exactly midnight. I think I was fed messages at a very early age. My parents used to like to play cards, and they had a card game every Wednesday or Thursday night at home when I was a baby. And I actually said to them one day, why do you keep waking me up at night? The card game is waking me up, and I can't get back to sleep so quickly. And they looked at each other and they said, we're not really waking her up. They were quite away from my bedroom. And they called in a psychic to say, what in the world is going on? And the psychic said that I'm getting many messages that are waking me up at night. I thought whatever I was experiencing, other people were experiencing too. You don't know until you realize that you are different. Many things were happening to me, things that were unexplainable to me. What I had dreamt was happening. I could sense many things, and the things that I was sensing were coming about, but something was going on. I will explain to you everything. You're ready. Thank you for joining me through this journey of self-discovery with the help of my spirit guides. I'm Sally Barnard, and you can find my book at authorhouse and amazon.com or visit my art on my clothing in my boutique at artbysallybarnard.com. Now back to the show. Hi, welcome back everybody. Any questions? Anybody in the studio? Anybody out there? Call me.
Well, before the break, you were expanding about your experience and in answer to Karen's question. How do we find that energy that you have found? At least that's the way I interpreted your question, Karen. Explain how this whole thing grew for you and how you were able to accept more and learn more.
Well, I had a unique situation, Steve. I was probably, and I've said this before, very obstinate and not wanting to understand this because I didn't, although I'd had it from a child, but I didn't realize what was going on with me. I thought, at that time, I thought everybody could understand or have premonitions. But I totally blocked it. I see that today. And Aldo intervened here because he had been looking for me anyway. And when he came into a dream that I thought I was having, and told me every aspect, my mind very quickly into what in the world is going on, and am I crazy listening to this? Then on top of it, I'm drawing. I've never drawn anything in my life. So the message was, to me, how could I be drawing things from past lives? I didn't, at that point I was just beginning to realize there may be other previous lives, but I'm drawing places and people and things from a past life. It was so important, which I'd never seen until I saw it on the internet. I wouldn't know what to look up. It was so important for me to open up then, that I was given stuff that there was no way that I'm imagining this. And I began to open up, because this wouldn't be normal. In my world at that time, it was very abnormal what was happening to me. So I began to open up. And as I began to open up and expand what they would call my consciousness, more and more things were happening. Now, it doesn't mean they weren't happening before, just like with anybody, but I'm becoming much more aware of what's happening to me. I'm going, I thought all these things were coincidence. You've seen too much for it to be coincidence. So I'm expanding my consciousness, I'm opening up, and now I see that I was raising my vibrational energy. And then suddenly I'm seeing people, places, and things that to me would be, oh my gosh, how did that happen? But it did. And I'm beginning to realize this is real.
As you know, I've been searching for my own spirit guide or some sort of a sign as to what my past might have been. And the other night, I didn't tell you this, but the other night I had a very strong dream about sports. And I've been into sports my whole life, and a big baseball fan, and football fan. And I found myself in the middle of that world in my dream. So could my past have been connected to sports?
Well, again, I'm going to give you two scenarios on that. The first one is we have a subconscious mind. So when we sleep, a lot of the time is coming from what we've seen around us. Like, just use this as sports. You watch sports, so it's in your subconscious mind. I'm not saying this is the case, but it can happen. Something you saw 3 or 4 weeks ago, the memory of that becomes what we would call a dream. Now, if it's something from a past life and you're seeing that, that's what Aldo used to say, it's called a super consciousness, which we don't ever lose the memory of that from lifetime to lifetime. Our subconscious, yes, it's more superficial. Our super consciousness, not. So it's very hard for me, unless you explain maybe more, which we can do another time, if that was a past life or from something you've seen, because it's sports and it's very, to me, it could be something you saw.
Can I piggyback on Steve's question?
Yes,
so since you were just saying about spiritual guides, do we all have a spiritual guide, but we just don't know it?
Absolutely. Every one of us has, and not just one guide. We have several guides, because what I'm going to say is that I truly believe, because it's in my world, and that's the best way to put it, is that before we come in, we discuss every aspect of our lives. So in that discussion are people that stay in spirit that we have known maybe from other lifetimes, and they're here to guide us. So when I say what, we may have a particular one guide, as Alda became, but he knew me from here. We all have guides, and I had astral projection where I met my guides. I didn't know, but they're telling me that they had an apprentice. And I'm saying to Alda, what are they talking about, saying they had an apprentice? Well, he got to tell me, and the guide that was telling me is that I'm giving you my apprentice. She'll help you because she had a similar life to yours. And then I realized I have a lady guide, not my main guide and not Aldo, that's actually going through this lifetime with me because she had a similar life.
Wow.
I didn't just pull that out of the air. It happened.
Wow.
So we all have, in answer to that, yes, each and every one of us has several people guiding us. We may have what we want to call a main guide, but...
So why is it, okay, I'm gonna, because I feel like I have a lot of curiosity with death. Like, some people die young, some people die 100 years old or more. And in their time, did they complete their mission? And
yeah. I would go as far as saying, yes, even if you commit suicide, and you know, it's a touchy subject because I don't really like to touch on that. You have, I shouldn't really say this, but they have chosen that before they came in. So all this, but we have free will, so it doesn't necessarily go that way. Because if we plan our life, we not only plan when we're coming in, we're planning when we exit. So I don't believe, and we have a couple of different exits too. I believe that, and it's a message that I've got. We could have one exit at one date and late, because there's no time on the other side. We can have another exit at another date. That's our free will coming in, which, well, they call it a timeline that we're going to choose, and that's also another subject. But it will basically happen the way that we planned it. However, we can change our mind here. But we're guided into what we chose. And I'll go as far as saying, when you say this is going to happen or that to me, our guides sometimes say us on the other side that are helping us, they're saying, you know, that's going to be really hard for you if you do that, or this is going to be really hard. But we still have that choice on the other side to go through it, because the harder it is, and I'm going to say that it touches you more, so you're going to learn more from it. So out of the negativity comes a part of positivity for you to carry on with your journey. And people come in, as we were talking before, to help us with that. That may be what we call old souls. They're going, well, you're going to get to a point, and I'm going to show you, because I want you to wake up. I came in for this purpose. And that happens with children, that sometimes I'm not always, you know, what I say, it's a little bit, you know, I don't always like to come out with this. But if a child at a younger age passes away, and I've seen a movie on this actually, but it's coming to me, that they came in basically to help us. So because they know they're old souls, they know we're going somewhere else, they come in to help us on this journey.
It's pretty amazing how we have this subconscious, and we're raised with our parents' beliefs, but when you become your own adult and you start parenting yourself, you start learning a lot of other things, and you had the spiritual guidance of Aldo to help you have more insight. So
yeah, because he told me that I already knew what I knew, only I didn't remember. And most of us, we come in with no memory. There are people that are very gifted, I'm going to call them, as Aldo did. At a year old, he was reading a newspaper. His mother thought he was the devil in Peru. But he came in with knowing. Now, he knew most of his lives, but you can't bring in every life because you'd go crazy. So he brought in the ones that were relevant for this particular lifetime for himself. But he knew me in other lives, so he came looking for me. I mean, this sounds like a movie that is completely way out, but I can absolutely tell you that this, for me, was 100% true.
And as he continued to impart, you know, the knowledge that he imparted to you, you had the opportunity to exercise your free will to either accept it or deny it.
Good question, and the answer is absolutely 100% yes. That's why he didn't contact me the year before, because I probably would have said to myself, this guy is crazy. What does he mean he knew me? Or he was reading a newspaper to a year old. But when he finally said hello to me, he might never have done if this thing hadn't happened with the astral projection. I realized there was something else. How did he know my dream? How does anyone know what you've dreamt before you tell them?
Right.
So he knew I was ready to be open-minded enough to accept that information. Otherwise, I'd say, don't tell me about my dream, go away.
And then you also have told me that he didn't want to give you too much at one time. He
No.
didn't want to overload you.
He used to, and his words were absolutely to me, little by little, because if he had crowded me with the 18 years later, with all the information and the questions that I was able to ask now, because I'd opened my mind enough, I would have thought he was absolutely crazy. And sometimes on my show, I feel also that I should keep certain things, because I don't want, once a mind is beginning to expand in your consciousnesses, if I don't want to turn anybody else off that, you know, off what I'm saying. So I'm pretty careful. I'm very, very careful about saying something that could, not always believable, but they've got an open mind about it. That's why I like to explain my story first, Steve, to people that don't know me, to show them by example what really has happened to me in this life,
And I think
because they're more open-minded.
I think many people will never open their mind enough to accept what Karen is looking for, or what many of us are looking for. You were ready.
I was 100% ready, but I didn't know it. So I had to have it thrown at me. I had to have had a dream, which I thought at that time, and I felt myself traveling, but I had no idea, for someone to validate that within maybe 6 hours of my dreaming, because I used to go into work early, and I know I had woken up, as I say in my book, at 3 o'clock. So it was just a few hours later that Aldo came and introduced himself to me and explained my whole dream. Then I start drawing. How do I see things from other lifetimes? It's in my super consciousness. So I'm drawing well, not only the pyramids, but things that were attached there that I had no idea. I couldn't draw a straight line, but that was my first message.
Wow.
So it's a powerful message. Do I expect everybody to believe it? No. But the fact that people are listening to my show, I'm hoping that it opens, by my example, their minds enough to start asking questions to me or to anybody else, or open books and read. Because I was led, even though I had Aldo in my life, I went to a bookstore, and that brings back the memory of that. And the very first book, they had a sale outside, was a big book, and it was on England. So I go in, which is nothing right now to do with spirituality, but I opened it, and my school was a boarding school in the country in England. I opened it up, and the very first painting that I saw was of my old school.
Wow.
So I said, well, I'm being led to do something more here, but I still didn't understand it. And each book that I picked up, and unfortunately I don't have them now, was something to do with what I was talking about. So Aldo could explain. I would ask him first, but he would show me why I would pick that book up, or what was in it that was so relevant to what was happening.
And of course, not everyone is fortunate enough, as you were, to have that experience. And not everyone is as fortunate as I have been, especially that night that I walked in the middle of an episode with you, and you were like paralyzed in the middle of being transported.
But this is all by what we've chosen, Steve. But for you, especially with you, who knows me very well, I could be talking absolute stupidity to you, right? But you got, that was meant to happen, that you saw me literally couldn't speak because I was totally paralyzed. And I feel that time, and I'm quite open about being abducted many times. That was in the middle of an abduction, that I actually, for some reason, was able to call out, because you can't speak when you're paralyzed, enough for you to come in and see what was happening to me. Otherwise, you wouldn't have seen it. So we work out certain things, and that's just one example of what will wake us up. Well, how could you deny what you've seen with your own eyes? It wasn't for me. It really wasn't for me. It was for you to see that.
Absolutely. And I remember vividly, it took me 3 or 4 minutes to pull you out of where you were, because you were trying to call for help.
Yeah, I was. And you needed to see that so that you could maybe understand a lot of what's happened to me over the years. I had Aldo to explain that to me.
And the experts, so to speak, might fluff that off as saying you were having a nightmare, but no, that was no nightmare.
Okay, I have one quick question. You said something about a book, and my memory just took me back to like 2012, 2013. I remember I was going to Kohl's to buy something, and I was led to like the jewelry counter, and right on the jewelry counter it said like blessings for today or joy for today, and then when I open it, it says to Karen, and I'm like, how do
Karen,
they
you're so ready.
do that?
It happens, and I'll give you a very quick example to me. I was on Denise's show, you know Denise?
Yes.
And we were talking, and we were just before her show came on, I was a guest on her show, and she has her book right in front of her. Well, right on the cover, I don't know if it was her name or, but my mother's name was Irene. And I think that's her middle of something. It was on her book. I don't even remember, but I said, that was my mother's name.
Wow.
So right there, it's just little subtle things. I happen to remember that because she was so delighted that had happened. Yes, these things happen all the time. But if you don't have an open mind, you just disregard it as a coincidence. It's not, it's synchronicity. And as you expand your consciousness, you get more and more synchronicity.
And it is a gift when you can
it's a gift because we're appreciating it. You know, a gift is something that you really appreciate. again, I'm going to say everyone can do this, but you've got to be ready. It could take someone could be listening to this, or someone's told them about it. They have a closed mind. It could be another 4 or 5 lifetimes.
Well, you know how they say the cat with 9 lives, and what we were saying earlier was out with the old, in with the new. So in our life journey, are we, becoming a better hero?
Well, what I'm hearing is we renew ourselves. So if you're open to this, you can actually even physically change. I'm not going to say your appearance drastically, but if you begin to open yourself, you can see different things happening to you. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, even if you haven't, but it's more, we understand more. What's going on with me? I'm able to do this, or I'm able to do that, or I look a bit different. Because we're manifesting all the time. We're switching parallels too all the time. But the more you become aware of it, the more you're able to see what's actually happening to you, because you wouldn't even think about it. I know with myself certain things have happened, and I realize I'm manifesting this to happen. So it happens to each one of us, but if you're not aware of it, it just goes right over your head. It may still happen, but you don't understand it.
But you know how, when we're kids, we're getting the understanding of what our parents are teaching us or what we learn in school. But once we become adults and we start making our choices and we form our habits, it's not always the right thing. So it's like, if you make a mistake, learn from that, but if you don't learn from that, you're going to do it again.
Well, that's actually very true, because if you make that mistake and it comes to you realize you've done something, you can fool someone, but you're only fooling yourself, because you can fool someone, as they say some of the time, but you've got to begin to wake up to yourself too. So when you begin to see your mistakes, which are all learning experiences, and I'm going to say it's not always a bad thing, as long as you can pull yourself out of it, because you're more aware of, let's say, bad habits, whatever you want to call it. You become more aware that you're doing this, and you're saying to yourself, there has to be a different way. In other words, what you're doing is you're now going to change the way, if it's not working for you. Sometimes it works for you and you don't realize it, but if it's not, and you're sick and tired of doing this same thing, you wake up to a new way of life. And this is basically, in a lot of ways, a lot of people can relate to that.
Yes.
And that awakening can come at different times in your lives. Like for me, it didn't happen for me until I was 60 years old.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so there's hope.
But we always, let me just say this too, we always have the opportunity for us to change. But again, free will and what we've chosen comes into place here, because that's also very important. And if you don't wake up at that particular time, more fool you. You know how they say, well, that's up to you. If you keep repeating the same thing over and over again.
I woke up at 60.
Once you begin to realize that, and I don't blame anybody, because I did the same things. But once you see that there's such a different way of seeing this life, you begin to open your mind more. And as you expand that consciousness more, and we've seen it here many times in the studio here, more and more people you're attracting who are at that level of where you are. On the other hand, if you're on a low vibration, the same thing can happen, because you're now attracting people from a lower vibration. And you're not feeling comfortable. You say to me, people say, if some that believe the way I do, you don't have anything to do with that. Don't. You walk away, because that's your choice, and you're able to do that with free will. So, but you have to be aware of what's happening. If you're not, same thing is going to keep coming to you. We can change anything, anything.
And I was making the move towards that part of my life, and then you came into my life and explained to me what I was going through and what I needed to do to continue to grow.
And that's a very good example. And I believe anybody today, they know more than me or less than me, it doesn't matter. We meet, everybody we meet has a purpose for our life. We just don't know it. I mean, today, and again, going back to the studio, when Heather came in, I felt that right away. So did she. Even to hearing a vibration, and she comes over to me and she said, "You feel me?" Because I'm at that level that I can, and she sensed that too. That happens with anybody. It's just that if it's a bad energy, what I realize today is I have to walk away. before I used to keep tuning into that. That's not good. So I can only speak personally.
And the most interesting part of that is all throughout my life, I might have seen that around me, but wasn't awake and aware enough to notice what was going on. But now, almost every place we go, there's somebody else like Heather or somebody else or Dawn, that comes into your life and just makes everything just so clear.
Because you're pulling them in. You're pulling them in. But again, I can say you can also pull in if you're in I say if you're having a bad day, it continues. You have to change your mindset. Once you change your mindset and believe that there's something different to what you're going through, it happens instantly, actually. Something you tell. It'll happen instantly. You just got to be aware that it can happen. Once you see that happen many times, how can you not believe this? You're lifting that vibrational energy. Very important.
And here, what we were saying about the studio, there's so many angels or, special people who walk in, and you already know, like with Heather, had that energy. She hugged Dawn, and it was like this beautiful just energy in the air. Like, not everyone has that.
But the timing was right today.
Yes.
I mean, even with Steve sitting here, he's seen this happen many times, but he happened to be here too. And I'm going to say this right now. I said to you, please put your phone down, because it's very important. It also attracts a whole lot of other energies. You did. And what happened, you saw exactly. And I'm not criticizing anybody that does that, but I'm just telling you how, in my world, how this works. You saw that happen in front of you. I said, feels like a train in my ear. She comes over to me and she said, that's my energy. Does a normal, not normal, we're all normal, but someone that doesn't understand that, what the last thing they would say to me, right?
Right.
It was her energy. And as soon as she touched me, that train in my ear, that energy, which was good, went away. She said, it will go away. I touched her and it went completely away. Now, I've had many situations like that, but it happened and it comes into the studio here. It's great. It's wonderful. It's a wonderful way to live. I have 2 minutes, so let's have one more quick question, and then I have to say goodbye till next week.
Well, we definitely, like, the energy is very vibrant when you're with other people who have similar
Like-minded.
ideations. Mm-hmm. Yes.
So let's end that. It's maybe not take me 2 minutes to say that, but it's so important to be positive. However, I'm going to say we also learn, if we forget that, from negativity, because we're meant to have that lesson. And it will keep repeating and repeating until we wake up to the fact that this is no good, we have to change it. And on that note, I think I'm going to say goodbye to everybody till next week. Thank you. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.
You have been watching Call Me Zena with your host, Sally Barnard. As an artist, author, and spiritual experiencer, know that you can always seek me out for resources by visiting artbysallybarnard.com. Join us next week, Mondays at 2:30. Have a blessed day.